Here you go. Thank you. Why don't we just bring Almond Lee right out here because that was
Yeah.
great. Australia. Hi.
Hi, Raph. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, I literally the other day was my phone's up there was going through my Apple clock, right? All the different cities in there. Now, 8 months ago, before I was doing this stuff on Haps, I don't know, I might have no, I had Chicago and whatever the other two default were. And now, I mean, I've got Lagos, Hong Kong, uh, um, Berlin, Paris, London, not Singapore, not that far from Singapore, in Malaysia, big city, Kuala Lumpur. Like, I have all of these time zones where I know people. And so I'm starting to get to that point where I can be like you did. Oh, it's afternoon in Australia. So, um, just nice to meet you. Tell us a little bit about Almond Lee. And I know you went to USC, right? And journalism is
Yes.
your thing. But like, as much as you want, now you don't, and we're going to talk about Hong Kong and stuff too. But as much as you want, but you don't have to talk about it yourself either. It's up to you. But like, what makes you tick? Who are you? We see you doing the news all the time, and I love that. But who's Almond Lee?
Well, thanks for having me on your show, Raph. So, hi, everybody. Does not know me or did not watch my channel, that's okay. I'm Amelie. I'm a journalist based in Hong Kong. And as Raph said, I went to USC, the University of Southern California, a few years ago to get my master's in journalism. And ever since then, I have been doing journalism in Hong Kong most of the time. I stayed in the US for a while, but not exactly doing like journalism related work, but still in the media industry. But yeah, and then I went back to Hong Kong and I just started working as a you know journalist. And yeah, I was born and bred in Hong Kong.
Oh,
It's a very
cool.
small city,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, but it's a very vibrant and everyone knows Hong Kong as the international finance hub or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't want to ask your age, but were you born in the after the turn of the century or before? After before. You were born in the
Before.
90s, I'm guessing, right? Okay.
Oh wait, no,
Because
before the 90s. Wait, what's the 90s?
19 what
Anyways, I was born before the handover in
that's what I was
1997.
going to say. Right. Were you born
Anyways,
before the
no, you're
handover?
right. I'm 27. I think I'm
Oh, you're
27.
27. Okay. Because that was
Yes,
in
I'm
97.
97.
Yeah.
It was the handover year, like when Hong Kong was handed back to China by the British. So
Right.
I was born a few years before that.
So you technically um, saw Hong Kong before. I mean, to me, the British kind of screwed it all up and thought they could negotiate with a country that kind of is anti-freedom, to negotiate those slick British negotiators negotiating with a country that doesn't believe in freedom, that you're going to promise us you'll keep Hong Kong free, you know? Um, so um, that's
It's
kind of
opinion
how
really.
I see it in the West. How do you see it?
Um, I mean, I technically I lived in the colonial era for a few years, but of course, like I was too young, I don't know anything, so I can't really compare, the life before or after the colonial era. But I think a lot of people that I know, or there have been a lot of talks about how um, I've talked to like pro democracy activists in Hong Kong who were already activists before the handover or during that period, um, and they said they actually saw hope in China. Um,
Hmm.
in terms of opening up and becoming more democratic, more liberal, and things like that. So I think perhaps that's what the Brits saw at that point, and that's why they would go into, like you said, the negotiation with China, talking about freedom, potential freedom for Hong Kong, high autonomy, and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say. I mean, I think at that point, it's perhaps just really difficult to to judge. And I mean, all they can do at that point was to, I don't know, just do what they have to do. I mean, of course, the Tiananmen crackdown happened a few years before the 1997. So I guess, some people would say, that's a sign already. Like, why would you do that? But
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I don't know.
it was
I don't
set
know
in
the goal.
motion though, like in '84. So, by the time Tiananmen Square comes around, they had been negotiating for a long time. I think
Yeah,
uh, to get where they got, and it took a long time. And I mean, I was alive in 1984. I was 18, and Chinese politics was not my bag. I knew about the handover by '97, but the I think from the perspective of just me, because I don't want to speak, for any other American, but I think Americans by nature, even liberals like me, have a strong pull of freedom. And we can see it in um, in the Republicans, and they're waving the flag and everything. But I'll tell you, and when things get rough, liberals feel that same pride that we do, and for the people of Hong Kong, um, you go from a colonial, a colony basically, which, okay, the British are nice, you're kind of free, but technically, they're still your boss, like you've been invaded and you're being held hostage, no matter how sweet the queen might be, and then they're like, but hey, people in China and in Hong Kong have been saying for a long time, we need to be free. So we're going to give it to the Chinese. Like that just does not make sense to me. Now I know world politics and all of these factors and forces, but what I see when I look at this and read about it is I see the British negotiating with the Chinese to keep capitalism in place. I don't think the Chinese were negotiating for your freedoms and to maintain those. They were negotiating for the capitalism, and the capitalism, oh, they need that. But capitalism, from my opinion, and you'll be able to tell I'm not a big on capitalism, can thrive under a dictatorship. So, yeah, I, w- again, you're a journalist, so I don't want to have you have to say something um, without that lens, personally. But I'm kind of curious to the average person in Hong Kong. Am I like crazy, or is everything the status quo, and we just have a few protesters? Like, what does a regular Hong Kong citizen feel about all this? Do you think?
um, that in a sense is a loaded question, and I think there are layers to the answers. Is that
Hmm.
um, Hong Kong is very much a capitalist city, like you said, under the British influence and all that, and the Western influence. So we're very much a capitalist city. And I think a lot of Hong Kongers, at least before the big social movement in 2014 or 2019, the not only the perception of Westerners to Hong Kongers, but also just like among Hong Kongers, we do feel like Hong Kongers are a group of people who just, we're just focusing on our own interest, whether I have a good life, whether I earn enough money to support my family and things like that. We think about vacation sometimes,
Which
which we
everybody
can
should.
think
That's
of.
I'm Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
mean
don't
that's
necessarily
that
think
that
of.
is no matter where you are, that's what you want people to do.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
and then I think what changed after 2014 is that you suddenly see that um, that kind of selfless, altruistic kind of characteristic um, among Hong Kongers, which at that time was quite rare because like everyone was like, yeah, Hong Kong people are like money oriented. We care about our own personal interest and one of it just very capitalist, you know.
Yeah, right. I mean, like Wall Street in a whole city.
Yes, yes. And so that actually surprised a lot of people, and they were like, oh, so we actually deep down have that kind of good quality, well, so to speak, good quality, deep down in our hearts. So that was actually surprising to a lot of people, surprising a lot of Hong Kongers as well. And um, so fast forward is that how do we feel about all that, all those social movements
Sorry,
and
I didn't
things
mean
like
to make it a loaded question. It was just, you know, it, I know that my American perspective is not what people want to hear. You know what I mean? But it's the only way I can sometimes relate it for myself to ask the
well, it
question. So,
depends on who you're speaking to. Some people will be very interested in the American perspective for sure.
well, okay, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, just, I think people, I think what happened in 2014 and 2019 did ignite um, a little hope um, among Hong Kong people that, we're really not all about money, all about, personal interests, and we actually wanted something good. Or I guess in that sense, people just come to an awakening point or reckon that in order to like ultimately protect my personal interests, I have to do something a little bit more than myself. So that was kind of like a changing, point, I would say. But of course, like the hope right now is diminishing, I would say,
Mm.
because of what's happening in Hong Kong. It's just, it's tough. And so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like you took a beat back there, and I mean, I kind of felt that you were feeling something inside when you were talking about that. I mean, you live in Hong Kong. I'm sure you are. Like, I mean, it's got to be kind of emotional covering the news, being a part of the news, living the news, right? Within a 7.5 million people, right? That's about the amount of people in my Chicago area, and that's the whole, you know, it's different, right? It's different in some sense than just a city. So, but because of I think just the feeling again of having it, to me, democracy, as much as I'm not pro-capitalist, still to me, freedom and democracy, I'd like to take it to the next level and the level after that. But is a valuable thing, and I just appreciate that we can kind of talk to you and kind of feel what that is like because you know, I think Hong Kong is a place that I'm not sure what's going to happen. And I want to make sure that things work out. I can't make sure of that, but that people can at least hear about it.
wow. Sorry, I'm just trying to like. There's this little thing that popped up that said my Facebook stream somehow failed, but that's
Oh,
okay. I
yeah.
mean, doesn't matter.
No, I mean, if you want to try and hook it back up, I mean, go
No,
ahead.
I
Um,
tried, but that's okay. It's
yeah.
okay. Yeah. Sorry. What was your question again? Come again.
Well, no,
Sorry.
yeah. So, no, I really was just interested. I appreciate that you kind of gave us that feedback of what you might think the average person in Hong Kong might feel. I guess my question is, what prompted 2014? What made that trigger? What was the trigger?
Um, I think it was a series of promises by the Chinese government, and then all of them subsequently failed. So the Chinese government failed to deliver their promises for a couple of times,
Mm,
and so that kind of, um, just kind of like pisses everyone off and be like, well, you promised us this, and we have been hopeful for, you know, couple of years already. And imagine it's just like a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, and you think that when your boyfriend promised you to like take you out on a date, we'll see that movie that you like, and then he said that over and over again, but then he just failed to deliver. So of course the girlfriend's gonna be angry, right? So I think that was kind of like, the gist of it is that because the Chinese government has promised Hong Kong people that, ultimately you will have the free election that you want. There will be universal suffrage. And then that kind of, so every time they give us like a timeline and they say, by this year you'll have it, or at least you'll partially have it. And then in the year of 2014, it's just, I give you that timeline again, but then I'm telling you that, you know what? No, it's not going to happen. So it's like you give us a few years of hope, and then all of a sudden you're just like, nope, not happening. No longer watching a movie. We're just going to play video games. That it changed course quite abruptly, but it's not like without track record. So that kind of like, because of that shutting people Hong Kong out of the gate, that move just really prompted everyone to go, like, well, we cannot accept that. And that's basically what sparked the 2014 protest in a nutshell. Yeah. Oh, you mute yourself.
Sorry, I moved my chair and muted myself. So thank you. The protests were big, right? I mean, how many million people, or how many people do you think were they saying back then?
I think in 2014, I don't remember the exact figure, but I mean, it has to be hundreds of thousands.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, for sure, because I've seen the video. Right. I mean, it's massive. You don't see protests like that, but very often, of that size. It was enormous, and the sentiment at the time was that because these had been a cascading effect, the Chinese had been not keeping their promises since '97, probably. Right. I mean, they're just biding their time, and I got to think that the Chinese are caught between the cash engine of Hong Kong, and these 7 million irritating people that are demanding what we don't really want to offer everybody else. So that might be keeping the wolves at bay indefinitely, and you have to push back a little here or there, and maybe you can get it to swing back. But what, Xi Jinping? Wait, is that who's head of China now? Wait.
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
I mean, he's basically turned himself into a dictator. So there's that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, by extending his the limit of his term indefinitely, I mean, perhaps that's a path to dictatorship, in a sense. And yeah, it's just like you said, it's a series of events that led to what happened in Hong Kong. It's just, you try to calm us and pace us for a little while, and then all those years, and then you fail to deliver. So that's gonna, I don't know, like the fight back is, it's almost like it's destined to happen in a sense. It just depends on like the scale and how many people or how big of the population are we talking about that don't feel satisfied. And in 2014, it's just big. It's just a lot of people who are not happy. Who are not happy. So yeah.
Well, that unhappiness. It's 2021. Things have not gotten better, right?
No, it hasn't.
And it's just, I don't want to make it a like a curiosity, for revolution, just to find out what's going on in Hong Kong. But it's for people that don't know kind of the history of Hong Kong. When in history were the mainland and Hong Kong one? Like, when did the British invade? Kind of ish. Was this in like the 1800s or like a really long time, like 100 years kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah, I don't want to
sometime
hold you to it. I don't want to put you on the spot.
before
Alexa,
I
when did the British invade Hong Kong? Mid 1800s.
yeah.
So for a long time, you guys were under, colonial rule.
Mhm.
And you were very young at the handover, but what you know from your, you know, your family and friends and professors and all these folks, well, in 97, when that was being handed over, were people, ex- what was their, were the Hong Kong people excited or like, just like, oh, yikes? Or, I mean, what do you think it was like back then?
It's interesting that you brought that up. In 1997, or I should say probably a few years before 1997, like you said, because the negotiations started in '84, and then so it was a good 10, 13 years before the 1997 deadline per se. And after the Tiananmen crackdown, actually a lot of people, those who have the capacity, a lot of them have migrated to other places. So we have a huge wave
Mm,
of immigration before 1997, or just right before 1997.
when they could get
So
out.
those who can leave, they chose to leave. Um, and the sentiment at that time, according to those who were grown ups, or like my families and whatnot. I think the general sentiment at that time was fear,
Mm.
because they witnessed what happened in Tiananmen Square, and it's just a horrific scene that you cannot just forget. Um, and that fear kind of just like played into everybody's mind, and be like, you know, under the so-called high autonomy or guaranteed freedom in Hong Kong, will we still face the same consequence if we dare to speak out? Or um, so fear was a very big element among people in that generation, including my parents. They were actually, well, at least my mom, I know. I think she was she was not like in Beijing for the protest, but my parents at that time, I remember my parents actually got married 1 year before the Tiananmen crackdown, and I think my parents were with some friends at that time on the mainland. I don't know, like vacation or something, going on a trip, and they saw what happened in Tiananmen Square, and it was just terrifying for them, and they had to like rush back to Hong Kong. um and so at that time, it feels far, but then it feels very close, because that Hong Kong is just, you know we're very close to China. It was just one border or one river
Right.
distance from the mainland China. And so fear was really big at that time. And when I say interesting that you brought that up, is because since 2019, or since 2020, especially after the national security law was enacted in Hong Kong, that kind of emotion was on full display in Hong Kong all over again. We see huge wave of emigration. People are just seeing, just going to, and in the past year, it's even like a situation seems to have gone really bad, that a lot of Western countries, including Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, they're offering, easier paths for Hong Kong people to
Oh,
come over.
wow. Wow,
Um,
I mean, in that, in just we know kind of in the way of the world the last decade, countries don't, like even politically, say we want people to come here because, we have so much xenophobia or whatever. So but that, sorry to interrupt you, and I want to keep your flow going, but like, wow, like they recognize, we're going to let you get out if we can help you. We'll
yeah,
be happy to help you. That's intense.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, it's same and different compared to 1997. The same is that the same kind of fear that Hong Kong people have. Um, and then the difference is that back then you don't have those foreign countries offering help to Hong Kong people. But now we do have at least several countries saying that we would be willing to help you if you need that help. Of course, it's not going to be just Disneyland open the gate and we'll just take you in whatever. There are still some
Right.
criteria. You still have to contribute, but that's
Sure.
it's just different in that sense already, and it made it easier um, for people to
Well, yeah, I
leave.
know a place like Australia, look, middle-aged white guy in America, like, really doesn't have much room to complain, but I'd like to get the hell out of this country sometimes. It feels like I'd like to, once in a while when the politics don't, seem to be going the way I want it to go. That's how we can feel. But like, nobody will take me. You know what I mean? Like Australia, like this was years ago. They want like $200,000 in liquidity and a promise to never work on the economy if you want to come live in Australia. I'm like, yeah, well, no, that's not me. I don't have that kind of cash, and I would need a job. So that they're relaxing the rules, even I think, is pretty significant for sure.
Yeah, it just really reflects like how dire the situation is.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing with all these countries, opening up their gate to Hong Kong people is that I think it's also like over the years, Hong Kong people proved to be an asset. Like they could be an asset to different
I mean, just
countries.
level of education, right? And
Yeah,
financial. I mean, you right. Maybe they're offering it because it's like, wow, we could grab
yeah,
20% of the
selling that groceries
brightest
and stuff
people on the
like that.
planet. You know, yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and I think it's fair for them to think like that because
Sure.
why would you want to just give freebies away? Like you gotta have something
Oh,
back. And so yeah, I guess on a like a fortunate thing about Hong Kong people is, like you said, highly educated. A lot of us,
mhm.
and then we have professional skills that can be transferred. So that's also a good thing of accepting Hong Kong
Well,
migrants. So yeah.
kind of. I mean, in Almond, I could have you on for 1,000 hours probably and talk about Hong Kong. It'd be so interesting, and I mean, I'm just having these connections around the world is great, and I want to keep talking about this, but I popcorn around a little bit, and I'm just thinking. So the people that could go to Australia, those the best and the brightest, are could go, right? They got the money, whatever, they can go. And they have been leaving for years, that class of people. But what about who's left? And what are the things that in America most people think stereotypically is that Asians are wealthy and well educated. And in fact, in the United States, the majority of Asians, most of them living, in the East or in Los Angeles, in fact, aren't extremely well educated and aren't extremely wealthy, right? Americans just don't see that side of Asians in America uh, as much as they see wealthier Asians. So in Hong Kong, what's poverty like? I mean, is there poverty in Hong Kong? I mean,
Um, we have a so-called poverty line, but it's not exactly a statutory level. Just treat it as a guideline. That's what the government said. Um, so we don't exactly have like absolute poverty, that kind of concept, or
There's
a
nobody.
standard in Hong Kong.
Is there? There's no like bad part of Hong Kong where lots of people like
Well, of course
can
there
barely
is.
afford food and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure there are,
Oh, okay.
and we're not talking about like just extremely tiny portion of the population who are living in poverty. Um, I mean, this is a world-known fact is that Hong Kong's property price is so high
Yeah.
that it's just really difficult to afford an apartment. It's so difficult to get roof up above your head. Um,
Right.
and so I'm sure people have heard of it, but we have this thing called subdivided unit or cage homes in Hong Kong, where basically um, people who own a property, landlords, they would divide their houses, one complete full apartment into smaller squatters, basically like a two-room apartment, and then they will probably divide it into at least, three or four rooms or even
Rooms.
five
Well,
rooms,
what do they call
with
them? What do they call these apartments?
subdivided units. That's
But
the
you had
better
another
term.
name. Did you have another name for them?
Um, I mean,
No.
usually we just call them subdivided units. Some even like some in a more like poorer environment, we can call them cage homes,
Okay.
or some even call. We have another type called coffin homes, where people just have like enough space to fit a bed or a mattress, and it's like you are just lying in a coffin, just
Oh
big
yeah.
enough for you to lie down. So
Here you
that's
go.
what people call coffin homes.
209,700 people live in subdivided flats in Hong Kong in 2016, according to the government. So, that's a pretty big underclass. I mean, for a city, but a city of 7.5 million. My feeling was that, like, again, what I would think, and just thinking for myself here, to me it's kind of like, because Hong Kong is this kind of premier place that the mainland won't won't let poverty get too out of hand there. You know what I mean? Like, how much manipulation in just the daily life and how you can live, in Hong Kong, is do you think is really coming from the mainland?
Um,
Does that make sense?
I don't know about like really the mainland trying to control a lot of the property like market in Hong Kong as they do in the mainland. Because I think we do have. I'm not very eloquent in finance news, but
Hmm.
the measure that our government has taken has not really worked. I mean, it does keep the property market not going too crazy, but they're still very expensive for just ordinary people to get their hands on. Um, and because of the proximity between Hong Kong and mainland, and a lot of mainlanders also like to invest in Hong Kong, and
Mm.
property is one of the investment. So it's that kind of investment that kind of like also pushed up the prices. Um, and in that case, just it's a saying in Hong Kong, actually a lot of mainlanders own our homes instead of Hong Kong people because uh, the wealthier mainlanders, they have the money to buy those properties, and they can rent it to mainland employees in Hong Kong, and you know but it's
Like a
just
perk.
but it's just not affordable for Hong Kong people, and because of that, I'm not saying that those investments are not good, because those investments still brings in Hong Kong, like,
Income.
dollars.
Mm. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
exactly. You have the stamp duty, you have all those taxes and whatnot. So it still brings, it has economic benefits to Hong Kong, but it just made it a little bit more difficult for Hong Kong people to actually be able to buy a property.
Right, just to be a homeowner. Onion Muffin says like boarding houses, I think is what it's what you're saying. I mean, yeah, the tenement houses in the US, I mean, we had lots of those, back in the day. Here, and of course, poverty's is different here, but the it's just so interesting to me to kind of feel this pull of Hong Kong, and that's where you're from, right? And I mean, you went to USC, you've been to America, I imagine, many times, and this pull of your city, and then this, and I don't mean this in any kind of deleterious way, but this kind of acceptance too of that, like China is here, like what could we really do about it, kind of feeling. And to me, again, with, I don't want to sound like hyperbolic, but like it's kind of like growing up, you know under colonialism, being held a hostage. Like, things in some ways haven't changed much for the people of Hong Kong for more than 100 years. So maybe you guys are really adaptable, at it. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. Sorry to be very granular on something that you're actually living. You know what I mean? So,
No, 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 absolutely. And I think it's just, there are people in Hong Kong who said that, like, Hong Kong's handover back to China is just another colonial era that we're living in. That's a lot of, especially those who are pro-independence. That's what they said. It's
mm,
just, we're just changing, our colonial just changed from the British to China. And that's what a lot of those pro-independence advocates said, or those protesters said. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess in a sense, you said, things didn't change that much. Um, I think, I mean, I really don't know, because I've not lived long in the colonial era, but I would imagine, um, I don't know, perhaps it's the courteous culture of the Brits. I think at that time people were still quite, um they are ruling us. The Brits are still ruling us, but I think in a lot of, because a lot of Hong Kong people actually think that, the Brits actually brought some good to Hong Kong. For example, the education system, the judicial system. The judicial system is one of the things that Hong Kong is renowned for, and also it sets us apart from China, from mainland China,
hmm
is our judicial system.
right.
So, um, people do appreciate those kind of things that the British brought us, during the colonial era. Uh, so, in terms of those things, I think people do see differently between, the British colonial era versus Chinese governance right now, because of, the so-called good system brought by the British, and now the Chinese, perhaps in some sense, we're trying to change, or trying to, like, mold it into a shape that fits more into the mainland China style. So that kind of change, a lot of Hong Kong people don't really appreciate. And I just want to, respond to this comment. Onion Muffin said, where people live in one house and split the rent evenly. I just want to clarify that it's not really the case in Hong Kong, because when it comes to subdivided units, It's so if you're talking about like boarding houses or like dormitory, that kind of thing, then yes, you do kind of just, well, I shouldn't say that. But anyways, in subdivided units, it's actually, it depends on like which part of the house that you get. Like if you get the bigger room, then you have to pay more. Or if you get a room with a window versus one that without it, then the price can vary
Goes
already.
up.
So you can be on the lowest spectrum um, in the subdivided unit category, or you can be the higher spectrum. You can be on the higher spectrum. So it still depends. So you can be the poorest among the poor, you know?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
the the mainland and the wealth, right? I mean, that the main there are it used to be the Japanese were buying up Manhattan. That's what the
Mhm.
Manhattanites would complain and say this was a long time ago, but probably around the time of the handover back in the day. And now, of course, it's the Chinese, mainland Chinese. They've got
Yeah, they're
so
just
much
by far.
wealth that they own three-quarters of Manhattan. What did you say?
Yeah, I said mainland Chinese people uh, buy properties like all around the world. And they are just all over it, all over the
Right.
world.
And that's an interesting thing because um, there's a privileged class of Chinese in the country where everybody is supposed to be, equal in the not equal sense. You know what I mean? The same. But um, that Chinese upper class society, um, they're in some ways kind of supersede Hong Kongers, right? I mean, they've got more wealth, more power and maybe more freedom to, to go places and buy things than people in Hong Kong, I wonder. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. It's an interesting thought to me.
I mean, yes, it could happen. And I think one of the very important underlying reasons that you also have to consider is that usually those, wealthier or more powerful people in China, in mainland China, they also have closer ties to, the top officials and whatnot with the government. So when we talk about privilege, it's not only just in a financial sense that they're more privileged and more able to buy things that Hong Kong people cannot afford. But it's also, what we call guanxi in Mandarin. That's connection.
Okay.
So a lot of it, back in the days when, like we were talking about the corruption in China, um,
Ooh, we lost her. Um, I anticipated this might be happening. Almond let me know that her laptop might go kaput. Hopefully, that is all that happened. I would imagine that is what happened. I'm going to take a moment and freak you out and try to focus my camera here because it's driving me crazy that I'm blurry. And maybe I'm not blurry to you, but here we go. Oh, look at that. All right. There she is. Hey, you're back. Your computer went kaput,
yep.
just like you said it might.
Can you guys
Yep, I
okay?
can hear you now.
Okay. Probably. Do we have a I just shut my
Ooh,
it doesn't work.
there's a
Well, run by
big delay. Hold on. Let me reset the server. Hold on. Yeah, I think that might have worked. Go
Yep,
ahead.
yep. Okay.
Yep. Way to go. You teched it out. You diagnosed it before I could figure it out.
Yeah. So, what was I talking? I don't know.
Um,
Tangent.
well, we were kind of I had us kind of jumping around, and we were talking about the wealth of mainland China, and I was kind of even wondering
Yeah.
if like Hong Kongers are like, well, go ahead. I got your thought back. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think like I said, one of the most important like consideration that we have to think about is that one of those privileges that those wealthy and more powerful people have is that they have connections. And so looping into the idea of corruption in China is that when a lot of these things happen or when these people do something that's not either that's societal or legally acceptable, there could be ways for them to get around it. So that's also one of the crucial privilege that they have over, well, not only Hong Kong people, but also just, um, you know, mainland Chinese who are in the lower strata in, in China. So, yeah.
Um, what do you think? Well, no, I want to talk a little bit about journalism actually because um, we're on Haps, and you've been on Haps longer than I have, and I've been watching you on Haps for a long time, and I'm like I said,
Thank you.
well, yeah, you're awesome, and I love seeing other places and knowing what's going on over there. So I really enjoy finding about Hong Kong. I'm curious, like, what is like, so we're having this conversation, and I will say in my mind, sometimes I'm like, should I ask that question? Because, like, what if the Chinese are listening? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying we're important enough that they might be listening, but like, yikes, I don't want to get you in trouble. And is that something you guys feel there as journalists?
As in saying
Well, the
things.
freedom to say what you want, to report as you see it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's um the problem has been there, but then it just got more serious and frightening over the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years, especially after the umbrella movement, the 2014 umbrella protest, and then of course now we have the national security law. Um, so yes, I mean a lot of journalists, and actually after the national security law was enacted, a lot of writers, uh, and also after the closure of Apple Daily, one of the pro-democracy um, tabloid in Hong Kong, have been folded, and their executives and writers being arrested. A lot of other writers and columnists, they just stopped writing, um,
Mm,
because of, because they're afraid of getting into trouble. And I think it's not only like a personal thing. It's not only about personal safety, it's also about your family.
right.
You don't want to get your family into trouble as well. And it's really all about track records, because the honestly the track records of Chinese and the Chinese government is not great.
Right.
um
Yeah.
I
That's for sure.
there very bluntly, because a track record didn't look good for the Chinese government. I mean, we've seen so many stories of, human rights lawyers or human rights activists in China, on the mainland. They were detained, or they would have their family detained, or just separated and things like that. And then you have the Uyghur Muslim stories, where uh, it's a very bad but common tactic, or at least that's perceived. I can't say that's for a fact, but at least it's perceived that the Chinese government or the Chinese authorities will use your family as a bargaining chip, or as a, just hold your family hostage
Right.
to
Well,
you do.
And all you have to do is have somebody have the perception that you'll do that.
Yeah,
You don't even have to demonstrate that you do it. As long as
exactly.
people are afraid, that's how the Chinese, I would imagine, control things with fear in a lot of ways. So with fear with some people and, money with others, whatever it takes to keep their thing going. I always wonder at the idea of how does a thing like a Chinese communist thing stay in motion? Like, it's just not very appealing, but they stays in motion because they have the power and the control, and nobody's trying to take it away from them, or is capable of it. Um, and Hong Kong, you know, I still honestly believe has a different path. Um, but man, it's hard to sit, you know, next to a looming giant, literally, like, practically sitting on your lap, you know. Um, it's there, it's ever present.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I know, like, during my stream on my channel, a lot of people, like, every time when I talk about politics, people will ask me, like, are you afraid? Or, like, have you ever thought of, leaving or things like
Hmm.
that? And my answer is always, I don't know.
Right.
um, because, am I afraid? Of course, like, I have worries. And especially, like I said, under the national security law, you've seen me saying this word so many times. You
Hmm.
can tell that, of course, like, I'm afraid of the law as well, because nobody wants to get into trouble.
Right.
Nobody wants to face legal consequence. Nobody wants to face jail time and things like that. Um, and it's under the national security law. I'm going to say that again. Um, one of the offenses is colluding with foreign forces. And
Mm.
because of the ambiguity of how, well, not Chinese, but the Hong Kong police and government have been executing the law, you just really don't know where the red line is.
Right.
And simply me getting onto a foreign platform, live streaming platform, just telling people what's happening in Hong Kong, or just speaking to someone like you,
Hmm.
um, since you're American, maybe I am colluding with the foreign forces,
Yeah, I've got a big army back there behind the screen. Just
Exactly.
kidding,
So,
China. Just kidding.
of course, there are fears and worries that I may get myself into trouble. And I think, like, really, the biggest fear is not getting myself into trouble,
Hmm.
but my family and the people that I care. And that's, having people that you love and having people that you care about is always a weakness. And I think that's not only for, Hong Kong people or Asian, it's just in general in human.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, Afghanistan, think of all those, people that were able to get out but couldn't get their families out, I mean, and the people that, you know, yeah, their families get threatened and, just it's the same thing. We don't even have to kill anybody very often because just the fact that we will, can be very scary. So, um, yeah, from a journalistic standpoint, like I said, I love that you're broadcasting out there and on Haps. What it like? What is? I'm going to take it back around to you a little bit because you've let me. What is like? Where's Almond Lee want to go? With journalism and stuff. Like, who do we? If anybody's listening, what do you want your next thing to be? Maybe we can, get you a gig. I'm just kidding, but
Well, I would appreciate
yeah,
that.
okay. Well, we'll talk.
At this point, I really don't know yet. I've
Well,
been doing journalism.
you are
Um,
27. I'm not trying to say, "Oh, you're so young," but I mean, you still have, you're making your career. You're at a great age, I think, probably for what you're doing. So, anyway, I'll let you keep going, but yeah.
um, I don't know. I think, like, sometimes it's also a dilemma for me, or it's like a struggle for me, because I do want to uh, keep doing journalism. But then sometimes it also makes me think that, under like under the circumstances in Hong Kong right now, it's just really difficult. And even if I persist, can I get something out? Like, can I get something good out of it?
Hmm.
Can I really do some good stories? Can I really do some good journalism instead of just doing journalism? um, there's a righteous thought in this. I get into this industry. The cliche thing about reporting the truth and whatnot, giving people the voice and all that stuff
Hmm.
is, you know, all those righteous and grand thoughts are still with me. I still want to do that, but then sometimes I also think, like, can I really do that?
Hmm.
And if I can no longer do that under the circumstances or under this situation in Hong Kong, is there anything else that I can do um, to, you know, help people or help myself? Um, like, I'm sure there are still options
Yeah.
in, career choice. But yeah, like I think the struggle that I had sometimes is just, I feel like if I started and if I end my career prematurely, then I feel like I'm not doing it justice. Or I'm like, sometimes I would feel cowardly if I
Mm.
decided to, leave journalism.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's like, should I leave for hopefully greater goods,
Hmm.
or do I stay and persist because that's what get me into the industry in the first place? So, and I'm
That
sure there's
driving.
a lot of journalists who have similar thoughts. And I also saw so many journalists leaving um, these months. Uh,
Yes, very recently, right? So
yeah,
that no, that's I appreciate you sharing that with us because having been involved with a nonprofit for almost a decade now that has been doing work in 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 mostly Black communities around racial justice, and I'm my friend is the founder, and her family's from Haiti, but I've helped her along the way in little bits to keep that nonprofit going and growing. But so from the standpoint of wanting to make a difference for your people, I mean, I feel it. I feel you. That's in you, right? I mean, it's part of your journalism. Even it's in your blood, and to tell the truth. And I've met very few journalists in my life, but I've met some, and um, it doesn't even matter if they were doing what they used to call man on the street stories, people on the street stories, just talking to people, or they maybe they were some big time Washington Post writer. There's a passion in there to tell stories, and to tell the truth. So, number one, again, just speaking for me, I certainly would never perceive you as a coward if you got out of journalism. We have to do things that we need to do for ourselves too, right? Even just when
yeah,
for myself, self love and boundaries and all these things that we need, right? I mean, I think we're a more evolved people, and to try to be more in tune with ourselves and with each other. So, number one, you've done it for a while. You're awesome. You're kicking ass. I hope you can keep doing it. I'm not going to say that I hope you keep doing it because that's up to you, but I hope you keep doing it. And the um, idea of doing something else and doing good, there's probably a lot of opportunities in some ways out there, and especially a communications and journalism background. I mean, you probably know how to write really well. You probably, you obviously speak English way better than I speak any version of Chinese. So, because I don't speak any version of Chinese, and your English is impeccable. So you've got all of those skills going for you. But to me, the
Oops.
oh, no worries. To me, um,
There we go.
the the idea of being a journalist is, got to be hard to give up. It's not like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being an accountant. Accountants are awesome, but I don't know people that might, when they're 8 or something, be like, "Ooh, I'm going to be an accountant." But I do know people that said, "I want to be a journalist."
Yeah. Um, I mean, I don't think I have never thought of when I was younger. I actually want to be a pilot.
Ooh,
Uh,
cool.
I know, but well, people just see my face on the stream, so they don't know how tall I am, and I'm not
Okay,
tall. I'm gonna tell you.
you're not
And
tall.
so I'm not. I'm really short, and
Uh huh.
uh, so I kind of just like gave up on that idea because somebody told me that I need to be, taller, and then
So
I
tall.
like eye problems, which I have short sightedness, and
Mm.
so I kind of like gave up on that idea because people told me that, well, those physical constraints made you probably not a fit pilot. So I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. People told me that
Well,
that's existing.
I'm sorry. I'm just, I love people, right? Let's, discourage a 9-year-old or whatever and tell them that they can't live their dream. Just let her have her dream for a while. But you did become a journalist, and now I get to know you, and you're a good journalist. So it worked out, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess one of the reasons why I gave up on pilot is they need to study physics, and I really am not. So
Yeah, you got to kind of know gravity a little.
you know, I think it's perhaps a smart uh, switch to career, perhaps.
Yeah.
And a lot of
No,
people can thank me for that.
no rapid math calculations to save the planet. We're not giving that to you, obviously. No. Well, but in like, so Marianne Ocon, right? You guys, have you been on a show together on Haps, right? She's in Lagos, political analyst. I think you've met, but I don't know. But you guys definitely need to meet. I'd like to get you two together. But the time zones are a little crazy for all three of us. But I think one of us, I would make it me, but would probably have to be up early in the morning or something. But but I'm curious if because in Nigeria right now things are really bad. I mean, they've got terrorists, and and things are rough in Nigeria, and um, things are rough in Afghanistan. But you know, David Newman, who helped found this apps
Hmm.
thing that we're doing, he's got a background at CNN, and there's a is there a poll to go somewhere else than Hong Kong for you? And please, again, if it's too personal, don't worry about it, because I didn't necessarily say we were going to get into personal stuff on tonight. But I mean, would you want to maybe be a journalist somewhere else other than Hong Kong?
Um, yeah, I mean, personally, I really like studying and working abroad, and that's one of the reasons why I went to USC. Um, Even though like the tuition is so much more expensive, and I had to
I bet.
so much money for living expenses when I could do that just in Hong Kong. And I still decided to go to the US because my personality just I really like um, working and studying abroad, and so that's why I made that choice at that time. And I think ultimately, probably one day I'll probably leave Hong Kong, um, and try to like work abroad. I don't know. Oh, did I freeze again?
No, you're okay. We've got you.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know. My phone screen also froze, but anyways, as long as
Oh,
you guys see me or hear me, that's
yep.
fine. Um, yeah. So perhaps one day I'll probably leave Hong Kong. but when I leave, then I'm not sure. Like I'm always open to become a journalist somewhere else.
Mhm.
But like one thing that really, you know, I always think like if I want to be a journalist somewhere else, then I really need to know that community. I need to know that, well, not only the country, but like the community, the neighborhood that I'm going to be reporting in.
Mhm.
And that would never be you know, the knowledge that I have about Hong Kong and the culture. So I always think that if I go somewhere else to be a journalist there, it's, you know, I'll not be as good as other people. But like the little sabotage in myself talking.
So
But
yeah, the self-sabotaging? Yeah. Mm. Humans are
yeah,
good at that.
I always like I would be open to, you know, get into journalism again in some other places, and that's also one of the reason why, um, you know, I'm doing English journalism. Well, one is because my Chinese is really not that good, but that's also
Well, we'll have to
you know,
talk about that in a second, but keep going. Uh,
well, it's definitely better than you, but
well, but yeah, I mean, there's
all my
literally a river between you and a billion people that speak Chinese
I
fluently.
probably am not the best. So yeah.
Wait a minute, though. So English is your primary language in growing up in Hong Kong.
No, I still speak Cantonese. It's just my
Okay,
Chinese. I think it's not as good as um, you know,
your
my
English is.
journalist who do Chinese news.
Got you. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, that was fun though. For the with a little bit of confusion there. But okay, so I think that's very interesting, right? Because I am meeting journalists a lot, and it's been a blast. And the idea that you said that, well, first of all, tell your internal dialogue to shut up because you can do anything you want. But then on the other side of it, and you did freeze, but we'll see if she comes back. So, you know what? Well, oh, here she comes. Wait, and there she goes. We're going to run a quick little, we'll run a quick little promo.
There. I just wanted to take a quick break and quickly say if you like this program or any of our programming, you can support us. You can sponsor us. We have a mission here, and our mission is to bring voices to live streaming and to the world that don't normally get heard. If you check my Instagram and check the story about Olivia Robinson, you can see what I'm talking about. But I would really appreciate it if you could go to the sponsor page. Is it I've got information there and sponsor me. You can do it right here on Haps, $5 a month, $50 a month, $10 a month, whatever you're comfortable with. But support our work and support this kind of programming. I think it's important and I hope you do too.
Well, that is the magic of the internet. We're we're gonna stick around here and see if Almond makes. Oh, here she comes. All right, I see it. We are, by the way, halfway around the world from each other. So nobody gets to complain about the quality of anything here because it's a freaking miracle to me at, being 55 and growing up with my parents in the 1970s were wouldn't buy a color TV because they were too expensive. I mean, and we had three channels, literally. That was it. Three channels, So this is a marvelous thing to me. So we were talking about journalism and going other places, and the thing that I wanted to also say was that I think because I know a few journalists that also would be willing, to go somewhere else, right? And then I think of the journalists that I know that are in the states that are from somewhere else, and I think you're right that having a good working knowledge and base of the people that you're living with and working with and reporting on definitely would be important. But I also think that um, having someone from another country come and report the news in our country is a really good thing because it at 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 the minimum shows Americans that sometimes people have different qualities, traits, ideas, understanding of things, and perspectives, and that's a really good thing. So, um, having having people from around the world be our news reporters probably would help journalism in this country. I think probably in a lot of ways, especially adding different dimensions and women and diversity. I mean, I'm 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 haranguing the Chinese for what they may or may not be doing in Hong Kong, but America doesn't have much better of a track record for people other than the ones that look like me. So
I was gonna say that's true.
yeah, no, it's very true. I'm laughing only because it's ridiculously true, unfortunately. But I mean, I from my perspective again, because I felt that since I first see you, would see you reporting because Haps has all kinds of folks on here, right? For at all kinds of levels, and there's just so much fun on the platform. But I mean, like first of all, when you even responded to me, and this was a long time ago in Haps years, I'm like, holy cow, like this journalist in Hong Kong, like we're talking to each other. Like, like how would that happen in my previous life, right? And it happens every day with me anymore. So, yeah, I mean, if I hear of any openings and I don't have that many friends, but I get more every day, I'm going to let you know because, you never know what connections can be made on these things. So,
Yeah, for sure. I would appreciate that. Thanks, Rad.
oh yeah, I'm not giving it much of a chance, but you never know. And we do. I mean, even just having you on a platform like Haps and telling the news, but I made did you see the little clip I made on Instagram using your footage?
Yes, I
So
saw.
the first thing is there's a comedy in the United States. It's called Arrested Development. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Um,
Hmm.
but it's well, it was you're only 27. You were probably 7. Geez, Rev. Okay, could have been 20 years ago. No way. But anyway, there's an actor, and his name is Will Arnett, and that voiceover that I did on that, I had to leave it because it's so over the top, and it sounds to me like this very one certain actor who's trying to sound big and important, and I'm like, oh, I got to leave that on there because I just was laughing. But I was gonna say the reason I'm saying that is the but the footage, like you know where where do you report every day? Like, could somebody in America see you? Like, what do we have to do to obviously, um, yeah. How could we watch you in? When are you on? Like, how could somebody see you there?
So I actually report for a local channel.
Uh huh.
So on TV, you wouldn't be able to see me if you're not in Hong Kong. But our channel does post stuff on Facebook.
Oh,
Would
cool.
search Hong Kong International Business Channel.
Okay, I'm
That's
going to
where
put
you'll
that
find.
in the thing here because there'll be lots of people watch the replay. You know, um, Hong Kong International Business Channel.
Yeah, that's right. So we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram too. Instagram would be snippets of like important stories instead of like the full program, but you can watch the full program on Facebook. So yeah, that's how you can see me. I don't think our channel has Twitter, so no Twitter probably.
Well, that's interesting because Marianne Duco Khan was on. Oh, it was. We were doing. Oh man, let me see. How do you line up with England? What time is it in England right now? It's early morning. So if it
Right.
were late afternoon for you, we'll think about this because if you want, there's a guy, Scott Lucas, and there is Olga Lautman, who's a Russian expert. Scott's got lots of knowledge of the Middle East. Of course, there's Marianne Okan, who's got Africa covered. You're in Hong Kong. I'd like to get a kind of a group of you together and talk about some of these places in the world that Americans don't hear about, right? I mean, if you watch CNN for the previous 4 years, nothing literally happened in the world. I can tell you from being addicted to CNN because I was terrified of Trump for 4 years that I did not see one piece of world news in just about 24-hour monitoring of CNN every day. So Americans need more of this. And I'm just a little guy on a little channel, but I think it would be really fun if we could get you with some of the other journalists that I've connected, because we've got HAPS journalists, but like Scott Lucas, and he's a retired professor out of Birmingham, Alabama, but his professorship emeritus is at the University of Birmingham in England. So he's been there for like 30 years. And so there's lots of different people. So you don't have to commit to anything, but I'll kind of keep you in the loop when I'm trying to get these things going because, again, one of the most marvelous things about this show for me has been over the last 8 months. And trials and tribulations and, how these things all ebb and flow. But I'll tell you what, no matter where this thing goes, the best thing to me about this program is the people that have met other people through me on the show, right? And there have been a few of them. We had one on the other night, and that's just what makes this a blast. And I want to say, you don't have to be my friend, but
Love to be your friend.
it's
It's
not a
okay.
requirement to be on the
Okay.
show. But I'm so lucky that so many of these folks that I've met from around the world that I've become friends with them too. And not trying to not sound like I'm tooting my horn here, but because honestly, even those folks that are out there, to the extent that I can, help you, um, I want to, and I just love being able to connect people, through this. It's really neat, and so I'd love to, have you meet Scott and these folks and see if we can make some more connections for you. Because at the end of the day, the reason that I do this show is to bring voices to the platform that aren't necessarily going to get heard, and you're heard pretty well. You know how to do it, but there are people whose voice, in whether it's in Hong Kong or in California or Chicago, that are marginalized, women, people of color, whoever, that if I can get them on the platform once in a while and let their ideas out there, that's kind of what I want to do. Don't get me wrong, I want to make more and more money doing this, but I mean, it's just been a pleasure to have you. I know you've got a Sunday, you probably want to, get going. I could, I could talk for hours. So I hope we can do this again. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. I want to give you a minute or two if you want to wrap things up, close out however you want, quick or a little long. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me too. It's been a really good morning chat, and I'd love to talk about. And it's very good that because on my channel I usually just talk about like politics, and political rap. And today I'm going to talk about different stuff in Hong Kong. So that's a great opportunity for me as well. So thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, it's just a little promo for myself. I usually go live. In a nutshell with Almond. That's a Hong Kong. Well, it's my not weekly, but it's a show where I talk about Hong Kong stuff, mainly politics, but I also talk about different stuff. Sometimes I go a little bit on my own daily life and environmental.
You do sometimes, yes,
Yes.
and
So
the
yeah,
environment too.
if
Yep.
you're interested, just subscribe me on Habs and sponsor me and Rev for doing great stuff. Uh, so
It's
yeah,
easy to
so
find
much.
Almond. I'm going to put it in the chat, but it's haps.tv/at almond, and you're there. And we'll talk about this maybe the next time you come back because we didn't have a chance, but your name, Almond, and the story behind it and the fun things of professors and all that. There's a lot of fun things about your name, Almond. And I got to tell you, seriously, um, I fully intended to talk about the news, and we did, but it's just been such a joy to get to know more about you, and especially what you've told us about Hong Kong. Because again, there's 7.5 million people there that want to keep their freedom, whatever level, right? I mean, I'm not to judge what people want to do in Hong Kong, but it's a big deal. And if some people hear this tonight that, or on the replay, that support, even in solidarity with the Hong Kong people, folks, um,
Yeah.
throw them a little love.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Almond. Stick with me for a second. I'll close out and we can wrap up real quick. Oh, you're going to get disconnected. You're on mobile, so I will say good
Okay.
night or good afternoon to you. Have a great day. Have a great week. We'll talk soon. Thanks again, Almond. If you need anything, just let me know. Everybody, go to her channel, sponsor her. She's awesome. Get her lots of sponsorship so she doesn't even have to leave Hong Kong. She can do it however she wants to. So we will talk to you soon, Almond. Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right. Bye bye. All right, everybody. Listen, this has been the big interview, and I am so lucky that I got to have Almond Lee on here, and we will be back. Wow, next week I think we got a pretty big week, and I meant to bring a list, but we've got Christy Huff, who's got 3 million views, I think, on Spotify now. She's like opening for big time acts, and she was here a while back. We've got Chris Angeles. We've got the CTO of Filmic coming. We've got two Latinx Latina, one screenwriter, one filmmaker coming on. And this is great because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, or yeah, it's so we're trying to time these things a little bit. And I've got bunch of other guests. Oh, Alex Angeles, the actress, will be back again. So, like, we're super excited. Lots of stuff coming down the pipe. I know I kind of took the summer off, and much love to all of you. Show some love and support for Haps. Keep this platform going, folks. Give people coins, sponsor them. Again, Almond, I see you back there. This was such a pleasure, and we will talk soon. I think I'm about to disconnect you, but thanks again. Great chatting. All right, everybody. Thank you. Yes. And